Hey everybody, welcome back. In today's video, I want to have a look at Ethereum and Bitcoin and also the Bitcoin dominance, and then present you with two scenarios. One where Bitcoin gains value on its dominance and we see the chart rise, and another where we see Bitcoin lose value to Ethereum and we see this chart go up. And now I don't think these two scenarios can play out at the same time, but it is possible, and I want you to make your own decisions on this after hearing all the information I give you. So starting off with the Ethereum Bitcoin pair, I first want to explain, we had a look at this chart about 2 weeks ago, but I've updated it a lot and made it easier to read. So I think you'll find this video much better to watch compared to the last one. Here our yellow lines show where our 4-year cycle started and finishes. So we can see 1 year started here and the other started here. And this is based off where we crossed below our halfway point. It's not off halvings or anything like that or peaks. It's just where we dropped below our halfway point, our max and our min. And of course here we crossed down below it in 2018, August time, and we spent 2/3 of our 4-year cycle below this halfway point. And this is shown here, equivalent to 32 months. And then we spent our last third above, and this is where we were in our bull run. Lots of people made lots of money. Now, one thing I want to point out, before these bull runs start, or these cycles start, when we're in our bull run phase, going into our bear run phase, we see that obviously we have our highs because we've been in a bull run, we put in our peaks, and then towards the end of the bull run, we start dropping. And then we cross down below our halfway point, and then last cycle, we plummeted and we dropped well below our halfway point and didn't really go back above this level until we went into our bull run. Here, however, we can see from where our last cycle started, we can see that instead of crashing down to levels here, like we saw last cycle, we actually rallied up. And this is really interesting, and it actually implies a lot of things for this bull run which are extremely bullish. Basically what it says is, well, first of all, I'll explain why. The reason it pumped here and not collapsed is because of the Ethereum merge, the Shanghai. This took place in September, but oftentimes a lot of the hype around these updates obviously happens beforehand. So, you know, the hype kicks in 2 months before, and then when the event actually happens, the altcoin does poorly because, you know, everyone's already put their money into it, expecting it to explode, but everyone thinks they're one step ahead when everyone's actually doing the exact same thing, making them all level. So we see this hype here from June to July, basically, and August, where we rally up, where historically we would have crashed. And this basically prevented us from going to these lows this cycle on the Ethereum Bitcoin pair. And we can see we actually retested basically the cycle highs of Ethereum and Bitcoin. And then basically after this time period went on, we can see we slowly went down like we did here. We slowly went down, and we still have. And it's like you can almost equivalent this high to this high. And ever since we've just gone down until we get to this point here, which is the halfway point between the 32 months, 16 months in basically. And at 16 months roughly, we can see, I just drew 16 months because it's much easier than trying to figure out exactly where we dropped and then turn that into a percentage and put it here. I just put it slap bang in the middle. We can see roughly around this point, we see a reverse. And this reversal basically means that Ethereum is gaining value on Bitcoin. And it happens around this, 16-month point. I mean, technically you can say it happened here. This was our low. And then ever since then, even though we retested, we have been going up. It basically took place here, basically. I mean, either of these, it doesn't really matter. And we are now coming up to this point in our cycle, which is interesting. And what happens here is we put in an initial resistance at the start when we initially drop down below, and then we don't break above that, and when we do, it's very bullish, but we usually climb back up to this over the next 16 months. So we spend 16 months going down, we find our low, and then we spend 16 months going up, coming back to this resistance, this halfway point. Now this is just slap bang in the middle, this is halfway. A more accurate resistance line might be at this one here. It would certainly seem to look more like the previous year if we drew it here. It'll be something I'll have a look at in another video, but I just want to draw it halfway for this one. If we spend the next 16 months, say if we finally drop down to this level, we go to our 0.55, which acts as our new low instead of our new middle, and we spend the next 16 months climbing back up to 0.7. 1, which is our new middle, our new medium. It puts us at this point here, where we see it on this resistance line. If we finally find it as a support, we explode up. And Ethereum has an amazing rally, and last cycle we see it went up 105%. If Ethereum on its Bitcoin pair goes up 105% from this support, which I will remind you is much lower. If it's higher up, this will be an even bigger price move. We see it rally up to about 0.14, which is well above our previous high of 0.12. And I think this is actually possible. The longer I've spent on this chart, the more I've kind of seen, well, there's a good chance this actually happens. And especially with the actual attention Ethereum has been gaining. I mean, prices have been suppressed on its USD pair for a while with Ethereum. But realistically, on its Bitcoin pair, it's done extremely well these last few months. And I mean, it's basically spent 32 months doing really well. And even now, though it's retesting this level, maybe we come back here, we retest this level. This will be an extremely difficult support to break as well, by the way. So if we do break down below this, we can see it go well below. We can see a move like this, basically in reverse, if it breaks down below here. I don't know if it will, to be honest with you. I think the Ethereum merge, indirectly, or without a lot of people realizing it, allowed Ethereum to be able to rally up a huge amount. And I'll just say this 100% move here, this wasn't even the peak that we put in. It was a lower high. And now I'm not saying it has to play out this way, but you can obviously see this line is much higher. If we bring this up, you know, maybe then we're looking at, maybe Ethereum only moves 60% up. 60% up is still at its all-time high. What I'm saying is we break well above this initial structure that has played out for the last 4 or 5 years, where we oscillate within this range ever since Ethereum's inception, basically, since, you know, excluding this one massive peak up. It looks like we do break out above whatever happens, as long as we don't crash down below here, which I don't think we will. Ethereum does well, because all things seem to be lining up that this is around the time when Ethereum Bitcoin flips. We put in our lows, and even though we spend 16 months not really doing much, I mean, it's a decent move. It's a 100% move over 16 months, which is good, you know, in any price if you're longing it. If we see a 100% move up, I mean, it's I mean, it's good, but it puts us in a position where we break well above this line here, well above this line here, which does make me very bullish. And again, you know, Ethereum is one of those coins that is stuck around now. It's been number 2 for a very long time, and it's a thing that takes a lot from the Bitcoin dominance as well. If Ethereum wasn't here, Bitcoin dominance would be well above where it is. And a lot of people, you know, they like to put their money into Ethereum instead of Bitcoin because they see it has more practicality. They think that if there's a move, they'll make more money with Ethereum, which is probably likely, to be fair. But even though it still doesn't really compete with Bitcoin in holding store of value, like, even though necessarily, I mean, since you know, peaks in December 2021, it hasn't really fallen too much. I mean, you're still losing value, but compared to the altcoin market, you're doing great. And that just shows how, you know, even Ethereum, a big dog like Ethereum, still loses to Bitcoin. But ultimately, I think this could be very bullish. It all depends on whether we break down below this sort of 0.55 level and whether we actually break down below it. If we just wick below it like here, that's fine. We can still see. And you see when we did wick below it and then bounced up, we rallied a huge amount. We went up, you know, we went up 60% in 2 months, 54% in 2 months, which is huge. And we could definitely see a move like that play out again. If we, you know, and maybe it doesn't rally up, maybe it like slow trickles up like it did here. But once we get to above this midpoint level or this resistance, we'll probably see a noticeable pump. And whether it's only 50%, it still brings us well above this initial, this resistance. Anyway, I've spent enough time on that. I'm pretty sure it's clear what my point is that I want to make. I think we could see a very bullish Ethereum against Bitcoin, and I think we could see it sooner rather than later. I mean, if this comes down in just after the midpoint, it brings us into January 2024, which is when a lot of hype will take place for, well, Bitcoin, but also a lot of people will start selling their Bitcoin. Bitcoin will probably see a bit of weakness leading up to the halving. And then after the halving, we'll see a bit of a rally back. So we could see Ethereum put in a low around here. People start selling their Bitcoin, so Ethereum does better than Bitcoin. We have a rally up here, like this maybe, and then we return back down. I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. I mean, 2020 May was when the halving took place last time, and you can see it's a very similar thing. We lose value leading up, and then when it takes we lose value during and leading up, and then we basically come straight back to where we were afterwards, you know. And then, you know, we go into put in our bull run sort of moves that bring us into great all-time highs and all this. Moving into Bitcoin dominance, this is where I want to flip the narrative a bit. And this is a much simpler chart, much basic chart. We can see I've split this up into four the cycles, and these lines are divided on where the halving took place. And, you know, we can see after the halving, we usually have a sell-off. After the halving, we have a sell-off. It reclaims a bit, comes back up, and then we have another big sell-off. And then we spend a lot of time, or we have at least this cycle, below this level. Now, this cycle for me, I don't trust it much because this was during sort of, you know, when altcoins were a lot lower. I don't think it's too accurate to glean a lot of information from here because we're in a very different time. And I know you can say, oh, well, you know, it's not that different, this, that, and the other. It was definitely a different market back then. 2018, you didn't have institutions investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum and this, that, and the other altcoin. So really, I'm not surprised that Bitcoin spent most of its time higher than it did here. I mean, we can see that once we drop down below this resistance, it's taken us much longer to finally break above it. But we have finally broken above it. And we've even back tested it and bounced off again, which is very bullish for me, very bullish. Which does show that I think I think Bitcoin dominance will rally here, and I think we will see it go up. However, I do want to say I don't think we'll see it go up to the same levels that we've seen here. I don't know if we'll ever come back to this point, to be honest with you. I think that now that Ethereum is a key player in the crypto space, I think that will forever take a lot of dominance away from Bitcoin. I think while Ethereum is still a number two, we'll never see percentages come back up here for the Bitcoin dominance. And I mean, I'm not talking about a huge difference in where we go. I mean, to be honest, like the 65 range is probably where I would put it. To be honest, I'd say that's probably our next high. And we can see that, you know, if we go from here to our all-time, you know, where we put in our high last cycle was a 46% move off this resistance. That's much lower, a 35% move. We're losing 10%, but I think that's realistic, where we have a big player like Ethereum and other big, much bigger alts now coming in as well. And even though I do think all these alts can still ultimately lose a lot of value, and I think they will on Bitcoin, dominance will go up. I'm almost sure of this, whether it takes, you know, 5 months or a year. I think Bitcoin will claim a lot of its dominance back and we will come up to high levels. I think we will definitely, I think we will definitely come into this range, 100%. But I think we could sort of, I don't know if we'll break above it, to be honest with you. I think this will be its new high. And we could almost see this happen every cycle, I think. If Ethereum keeps growing, more institutions keep dumping into Ethereum, and other big altcoins come along, you know, there could be a new Ethereum for this cycle that takes number 3 spot, or it takes Ethereum's spot, who knows. We could see this sort of diminishing return where we never put in highs again. We continuously get lower highs. So that's sort of a case for Bitcoin doing well, compared to the crypto space, the whole crypto space, the altcoin space, over the next while. We can see that, let me just pull up a time frame. It took us 414 days from this low to test our high. If we sort of bring it out 414 days, we can see that brings us into August 2024, which would make sense, you know, after the halving and leading up to the halving. Sorry, during the halving and after the halving, we have a big sell-off, big sell the news sort of event. People get worried, miners sell off their Bitcoin because now their incomes are cut in half. But then after that, we saw before, the dominance almost comes back to where it was previously. So whether we make it up to here, and it's January time, a few months beforehand, people start selling, we come down to 55%, and then we come right back to where we were at, say, just below 60%, and then we keep rallying up. This might not be too much of a, you know, this might be something that could actually play out. But again, this is all speculation now, and it should be up to you to make a decision on what you think will happen. I'm just here to give you the data. Hopefully you liked the video, guys. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below where you think it's going. Take care and peace.